This is Women in Linux. Welcome to the Women in Linux podcast, exposing women to information and careers in technology.
Thanks for joining Women in Linux with your hosts Tamika Reed and Dee Parler. This installment of our CTO series, we're chatting with CTO of Meros, Eric Seitz.
So I'm currently a consultant. I consult for security companies, security awareness, or anti-malware companies. And previously, I worked for a company called Threat Track Security, which was an antivirus vendor, and worked for them for about 12 years. 12 and a half years. And previous to that, I was a developer and also a CTO at the time for a company called AskSam Systems, which was a database company. So I've been kind of in the business for quite a number of years. Mm-hmm. I worked for AskSam for about 11 and a half years. Previous to that, I was at Florida State University and did a lot of consulting, putting myself through college. But basically how I got started and the reason I have always gravitated towards being a CTO is that I've just always loved technology. I started, very young, at the age of 7, I think, on an Apple II computer, playing with the software, learning how to program. I didn't have a lot of software back then for an Apple II, so it came with a manual on Apple Basic. So basically, learn how to do simple for loops and programming, and so I really got into the programming aspect of it, and basically kind of just gravitated towards building software, understanding the hardware, and just learning as much as I possibly could about all of that stuff. Even before college, I had actually was working, part-time for the university for a professor who was in the math department. And he had a ton of old computers that he had written some software for and wanted to take that software to some newer machines and upgrade it. So I spent a lot of time working with him on older computers, old 8.5 inch, floppy disks, or 8-inch floppy disks. They were, and
the dinosaurs.
Yeah, they were, these dinosaur computers, but they were very still interesting to me. So, like I said, and even in high school, I went to the first Microsoft Windows Developers Conference. They, were expecting I think about 200 people to show up, and about 2,000, signed up for the conference. Mm-hmm. It was the first one they had. They actually had it in the Chinese Theater in downtown Seattle. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't in a job that, except for the work I was doing for the university. I mean, I wasn't a Windows developer at the time. I actually won a copy of Windows 2.11 at a small computer show in Tallahassee, Florida. And got interested in installing that. It was old, really bad graphics, EGA, 4 colors, like white, black, magenta, and I think cyan, or maybe it had been yellow too or something. But it was so bad. But I just loved all that different aspects of it. Decided, well, I've got this, and I'm trying to figure out how to program in it, and it was really hard. So I went to a couple different conferences. Went to a small 2-day conference in Atlanta, and then that's where I learned about the Professional Developers Conference. Then I signed up for that and flew out to Seattle and went to that conference. And then that was around the 91, I think, 1991. And, things kind of just snowballed from there. I was one of the few people in Tallahassee that was writing software for Windows. I mean, that was pre-Windows 3.0 days. And, Windows, and then Windows 3.0 came out, and then, Windows 3.1, and a lot of software companies were still, releasing software for DOS.
Okay.
So I just happened to, I had actually created a small business with some friends of mine I think we were going to build game software or something, because
Right.
why not?
Right. Well, that was the area, area kind of drove that,
Yeah.
Me living in Seattle, that area kind of drives, the gaming aspect of it, and programming was huge when I lived in the area. So I can only imagine what it was like when you were in the area.
So I ended up getting had a friend of mine knew somebody who knew somebody. I think he was at a pool party or something, and they said, oh, we're trying to convert our DOS product to Windows, and we've been trying on it. We've been working on it for like a year, and we're not making any headway. So I said, somebody dropped my name and said, hey, we've got this Windows guy. He's building his Windows games. Why don't you check this guy out? So they brought me in, and I think I had a good 6-hour meeting. Met everybody in the company and the owners and the at that time the product manager, and went to lunch and spent another 4 or 5 hours after lunch at their office just talking about stuff. And basically joined them to take their DOS product and to basically rewrite it from scratch and make it work properly on Windows. And that took a good 14 months, but we ended up writing a word processor from scratch, a Windows word processor with different size fonts and different types of fonts, and bullets and numbering, all the web. Back then there was no real libraries you could get your hands on, or there was no reusable controls.
Right. No APIs.
No. Well, you had the Windows APIs, but there was not like a pre-built-in edit box that supports multiple fonts like you can get nowadays. Same thing with like a toolbar. There was no, we actually had to, draw every single icon and store it in a big bitmap. And when the mouse moved over the toolbar, you had to show which one was active, and, actually draw them pressing the button down, and all that code manually. I mean, it took us a long time, but it was we also, made a drag and drop reporting system, report builder, because it was a database. They had the data entry, and then they had templates that the user fills out to insert the data, and then a report system so you can drag and drop kind of WYSIWYG and build a report that you can run that outputs the data from the database. It was actually a free-form database, so it was actually quite a bit more difficult. So as part of working for them, I started as a developer, and quickly basically became the VP of R&D and then CTO within a few years, and basically have been a CTO since then. And the reason I was a CTO, I did the programming, but I also handled all of the IT work in the company. So, installing servers, when the World Wide Web came along in 95, built our first web servers, email servers. The town we were in was kind of a small town, so we actually were also the local internet service provider. So, built an ISP for that town. Helped a friend who owned a computer store actually start an ISP business for 6 other cities. Built his web hosting business. Helped him build his web hosting business. I built some software to monitor all the network machine networking and the modems and a bunch of different stuff. Basically, it was one of the first packages for Windows NT, software packages for Windows NT that did network management. So it would ping, it would pull SNMP data, had a SNMP MIB parser, so you can look at all the different SNMP data bits and graph them and look at them and set alerts. And we built a Visual Basic scripting language into it, so you could know, well, when an event happens, run a script. So basically, I just a lot of different directions, and just mainly just because I love doing that kind of thing, and learning new stuff constantly. So again, I'm about 11 and a half years with that company. At the end of that time with them, I actually lived in India for about a year, running a software development team there for that company to build kind of the next iteration of their products, which was a kind of a large cross-platform information database system, indexing system, database system. So lived there for a year and then came back and joined a new company in Tampa. In 2004, I guess. And again, I started there as the VP of R&D, mainly because they were a software distributor that took other people's software and resold it. So they had a good sales department, a good marketing department, and they also did first line tech support for those products. So they had a good tech support department. But they didn't really have, they were about a 50-person company, but they didn't actually make any of their own software. So I came in to help build the R&D department for that company, actually start building our own software. So I started off as VP of R&D. We hired about 100 people in R&D at the first year, and got 3 or 4 different products in the works and started releasing those. And then shortly, been about 2.5 years in, basically worked as became the CTO for the company, mainly so I could just work on building the next set of products. So, there's a couple different types of CTOs. There's 2 major types, and there's a bunch of subtypes. But I came up with three. Yeah. So I've been both. I've been 2 different types. I've been an infrastructure CTO, which and been more of a software / technology CTO. So, and I'll explain kind of what I mean by those 2 types. But so at the first company, AskSam, and even in the first, probably 6 years or so, in the second company, I was always the technologist guy. So if we need to figure something out, or we need to build something, some new type of product, or where kind of that future looking, where are we going? What's the next cool thing that everybody was going to want or want to need, or what should the company do next? Right. So I spent a lot of time in my career doing that. But I've also been another type, which is again, it's less on the software side, but more on the technology side, or infrastructure side. So an infrastructure CTO is the guy who's looking at the facilities and how the services are being delivered using technology. Right. So that could be everything from the phones, the network, to the types of servers, to the types of infrastructure. Oh, are we going to be doing some type of software as a service? Okay, so how do we do that software as a service? Are we going to do, an in-house system, or are we going to host that software service in the cloud? So not you're still building some things, but mostly looking at what's out there that we can then take and use, combine together, and make something larger than the sum of the parts that moves the company's agenda forward or to a new place or to that next evolutionary spot. So there's one is trying to look at building the technology. The other one is trying to look, well, what technology can I use to beat the other company or get there faster or help our customers better or without trying to build it. So I've been both, and it's been fun. What was the third type that you came up with?
So the third type that I came up with is more like an evangelist. Going out, promoting the product, but also promoting what someone sees as the future. So I guess you can kind of say that's a combination of both infrastructure and software, but more on speaking in a speaking role about the company or the product or the future of, and maybe having a VP of engineering doing the actual work, and then having an R&D team maybe combined with a VP of engineering to report back, and maybe that person may go off and do some more digging and research on it and say, well, I think we should go in this direction based upon this and my research. But that's just what I've seen.
Yeah, I've spent a bit of time, basically. So I've had a very large team as VP of R&D, but as the CTO, I've kind of been in a couple different positions where sometimes the VP of R&D reported to me and sometimes not. I've also had, as the CTO, had a small team that just basically prototypes new things. Here's an interesting idea. How can we? Will that work? Or how will that make things better? Or here's some interesting technology. Can we do this to improve things? So. I've never been too much in the evangelist type CTO. I mean, I've definitely done the conferences and talked on behalf of the company and the technology, but it was never my full-time focus as part of as my CTO duties. So that's one type I haven't
came across. And then while I was listening to you, I was writing down a summary of your qualifications that I heard, and you feel free to take away and add to this as you like. What I did here was software programming, and also creating projects, kind of like creating your own. Not necessarily your own GitHub, but going out and creating projects that, or tools that enhance others. So I hear that. I also hear pushing forward, being able to say, okay, well, I want to try something new. This is out of my realm. Push forward and go ahead and just hop on something and go from there. I also heard relationships. When you were speaking on someone wanted to convert their actual program to DOS, but somebody mentioned you. To me, that sounds like a relationship. Somebody said, hey, this person over here does that. Why don't I introduce you to that person? And then, the magic happened.
Yeah, definitely lots of networking. I mean, just, I've been lucky. I've traveled quite a bit as being part of both software companies, but and the second one as an antivirus vendor. So we basically created a new antivirus engine from scratch. Okay. So we didn't have anything to begin with, and we decided that this spyware was a pain in the butt, so we created a anti-spyware product. And they said, well, if we're really going to do spyware, we really should do antivirus also. So we started and basically prototype an antivirus engine and said, oh yeah, okay, we think we can do this. So here's what we're going to need. We need to find some people, some experts. We need to go to the conferences. We need to get to know other people who've already done this. So, I did a lot of traveling. I went to, the antivirus conferences are usually in most of the time in some other country. So I, go there, meet those people, get to know them, and, ask questions, and most of them are very happy to assist and that's an interesting kind of group because, they're doing what they do because they love the fight of stopping the bad guys. So it is competitive, but they're more open to, sharing that knowledge or sharing resources than they are on what you wouldn't find in like a cell phone manufacturer. Two cell phone manufacturers aren't going to share anything.
Right.
They may license, but they're pretty much rivals. But antivirus industry, even before I got into that business, they had a long-standing these long-standing relationships of sharing malware samples or viruses with each other. So hey, one of my customers found this thing here to the other antivirus companies. Here's a copy of it. You guys need to get a detection written for this thing too.
Right.
So. Right. I mean, they were already and they, like I said, had this long-term sharing relationship set up.
And when I hear that, I hear like back to your skill sets that I hear is knowledge of infrastructure and networking, understanding how the pieces connect together, and understanding not just how the pieces connect together, but how they flow in terms of again. Your developers or someone who's I guess on the ops side of that, and then security, and then I also wrote down understanding monitoring, which is key across the board for developers, ops, security, the whole nine. Like it's just one of those things you just have to do. Yeah. And then I also pulled out maintain creativity. Not wanting to be settled. Like once you get in a role, that's nice. I have, accomplished everything I needed to. I've done the research. I've developed something, but now I'm ready to do something new, maybe somewhere else. And that's what I hear.
Well, I've always, for most of my career, as and especially in the CTO role, is basically, looking for what that next thing is, and then trying to build it or prototype it, and then either most of the time, either give that to an existing team or build a new team around that to move that forward and to complete that and bring it to market. So, we've done a ton of different prototyping on different things. And not everything panned out, which happens, but we're definitely better for it for trying. And then in the technology side or the infrastructure side, a lot of it has to do with just understanding what the right tool for the job is, and learning how to use that tool to accomplish whatever goal, and is that the right tool for that goal? Right. So, and then also, is that the right tool for our size or the size we want to be at the next 6 or 10, 12 months? So you have to kind of, do lots of research. I'm constantly reading, looking at new things, the technologies out there, what problem those new technologies solved, how do we have those problems, and can I use that tool to apply it to our problems, right, or to our goals? Right. Like early days of cloud, what is cloud? Cloud is pretty much everything that's not here. Everything that's somewhere else is cloud nowadays. So, understanding, how we could use it, what it was good for, when not to use it, as just an example. I spent a lot of time doing those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. And then my other question is, so there's not a really clear defined path. It seems like you kind of made your own path. And that's kind of hard from my perspective as a woman to make your own path, because for us, it's never anybody, there's nobody there grooming you to be a CTO. You just have to face the facts. We're not being groomed to be CTOs, but so how can one change that landscape? Like how can we do a better job of making sure a woman gets into the necessary position to get groomed first, and then move into a role such as that without creating her own company? Because right now it's like the only way you're going to do that is you got to create your own company. But, or if you did want to move up the ladder, how does that work?
Yeah, a lot of times that is the creating your own company is the path to a CTO. There's different ways. A lot of it just has to do with knowing the domain, knowing, whatever business you're in. If you're like, say, a programmer or maybe DevOps or something, is this, knowing everything you possibly can about the business, not the operations plus the actual what the business does and how the business does it. Mm-hmm. So if you're a programmer, or say you're a DevOps, and you've got some scripting to do, and you've got some monitoring to do, and you've got to maintain some stuff, and you need to be trying to automate that in a DevOps role. Mm-hmm. Understand the whys and the hows and behind that. Why are we monitoring this? If something goes down, what's happening to the customer?
Right.
Really, I think a lot of it goes down about caring tremendously about how the stuff that you do affects the customer. Mm-hmm. So, if you want to build a good business and make that business grow, almost all of that comes down to, making sure there's a good customer experience. You're giving them what the customer, what they need at a good value, and giving them service on that, whatever it is.
Right.
Now, as in a CTO role, you can't affect the marketing really, and you can't affect the sales, but you definitely can affect, how well that service or whatever it is that customer gets. Say in a DevOps role, you can be working for a cable company, or maybe I don't know, let's say maybe a small healthcare software company or something. Your customers could be other healthcare companies where they've got Interdata, or it could be small medical practices, general personal doctors or something. And, mm-hmm. Understanding, how they get their jobs done. Oh, they need to enter data fast into your software, making that process as simple as possible from them, making sure they're dealing with the regulations as easy as possible. Mm-hmm. So, understanding what the customer cares about is I think kind of one of the biggest roles that a CTO can do. That's kind of your role. Is you have to look at what you do, how that affects the customer, and make sure that's the kind of the right direction for the company.
Because the last thing you want to do is lose your customers.
Yeah. You want to grow those customers. You want to make sure customers are taken care of. You don't want those customers going somewhere else because you're not doing what you need to do for them. You need to respond to those customers. They say, they need a feature. Well, make sure you write down that feature. Every time mm-hmm. a customer calls in, or even if you're like a DevOps person, keep your own list of that type of stuff.
Right.
to help you understand, what's going on with the business, what the customer's needs are, and work on ideas of, well, the customer says they need this feature. Well, does he really need that feature? Or can we tweak this to, and it provides this feature, and that feature.
Right.
So, working on those ideas, thinking about the ideas, maybe prototyping those, or bringing those to somebody. It's a lot of it has to be, a lot of it's about being involved, and understanding that the business and the customer.
And so with that being said, if you had to groom someone, what would be the top, or mentor, what would be the top 5 qualities that you would want to pass on, or you think that you would want to pass on?
Well, kind of number one is just, it kind of depends on the type of CTO, but
so let's go with infrastructure CTO.
Well, infrastructure, it's so this answer, the first one is kind of the same for both, but it's basically just knowing the domain. So lots of research, understanding, for an infrastructure CTO, it's understanding, all the different types of hardware that's available out there, the different types of services you can get. For example, monitoring. So you need a way to monitor something, and that monitoring system has to contact somebody. So there's a couple different ways you can build that. You can say, okay, I'll just send an email, or I'll send a text message, or, well, if you're going to script that, or how are you going to do that? Well, you could do that, or you could go out there and there's a half dozen products, online software as a service products that you could use that kind of a lot more beneficial. They're very cheap. Just knowing that those are out there and kind of the feature sets of those products is kind of the bread and butter of infrastructure CTO. You need to know what you can get out there that you don't have to build, that you can use to accomplish some goals. Now that's kind of broad. That's really broad, because you need to know, okay, what are the different cloud services providers out there? What does each cloud service provider offer over the other? Should I use AWS, or should I use Rackspace, or should I use Azure? And what the difference and why? So lots of reading, lots of researching, understanding, maybe even setting up some dummy accounts, or some free accounts. A lot of those services have free accounts where you can spin up a very small single machine, look at the different services, write some small things that utilize those services, grab their sample projects. Most of them have sample projects. So, a lot of it is like that kind of that curiosity and the research. Spend time in trying to figure out, what's available out there that we can need and we can use to apply to stuff to get our jobs, or get the company's jobs done. For infrastructure, that's, making sure the phone systems are going, making sure that, we can scale all of our services to our 1 million customers, or 500,000 customers, or whatever your code base is, or your user base. Picking the right, once you've done that research, then you'll know, what the right tool is to pick in the right situation. So number one is very big and broad, but again, it's like lots of research and reading and understanding what's out there, what's new stuff's coming, and how can I use that to, support your company's infrastructure.
Okay.
So let's see. Number two is, I think is, I don't think you have to be a programmer to be a CTO. Depending, especially if you're basically an evangelist CTO, but you do have to know your company's products inside and out. And that's whether you're any type of the 3 types of CTOs. If you're infrastructure, if you're, future looking, if you're a evangelist, you need to know, everything about your product. You should know it better than anybody else in the company. or service or whatever it is that the company offers. Hell, if it's a healthcare company, you should know everything about the different policies and the services, and you should understand everything about the company. That's number two. I mean, that is, how are you going to know how to move something forward, or to evangelize it, or to add on to that infrastructure unless you know it inside and out.
Mm-hmm.
So that curiosity. So again, curiosity of the research, but also taking that and looking inside the company, understanding that the internals of everything that you could possibly understand. That's kind of the super important to get there. Number 3. Let me think about that one. That one.
That's a hard one.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think kind of number 3 has to be, definitely relationships in the company. Well, even in kind of maybe number 4 is that external relationships, but in relationships inside the company, as a CTO, you've got to realize that a lot of the time you will not be the one implementing the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You may know how to do it. You may have done it before, but a company can't scale and can't grow if that company relies on a single person to make something happen.
Mm-hmm.
So that CTO needs to have really good relationships inside the company to be able to work with whoever is the people or the department or the group or the team that is going to make those things happen.
Mm-hmm.
So as a CTO, yeah, you may be able to do it by yourself, and probably should at least, once or twice do that stuff. And then once it's time to implement, say, okay, guys, here's kind of what we need to do. Here's kind of the plan. Here's the diagram. But the whole point of that is that you need to have really good relationships to the people that you're going to work with, to kind of shuttle or lead them to that direction.
Right.
I mean, a lot of times, you may not have a prototype, or you may not have built something before, but you understand it enough to know that, okay, that's kind of the best way for us to build it. But then you got to communicate that, and you got to, work with other people to buy into that, to understand why that's kind of what needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have good relationships with these other people, you're never going to get that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is definitely, being very nice to people, understanding, what their job is, helping them get their jobs done.
Mm-hmm.
If they've got something difficult, even though maybe not be your job, to help them on something, or if you know a programming task or know a language that they don't know and they're having difficulty with that language, spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes or so, helping that person out.
Right.
But just building nice, cordial relationships and respect with, lots of other people in the company. A lot of what a CTO does is guidance and to get things done.
Right.
And you've got to have, like I said, you've got to have that respect in place. You've got to have that understanding that and trust. You got to have this trust that you're not leading them astray, or you're not doing something just because, or doing something out of spite, or you got to be the helping hand. You're trying to do good. You're trying to do good for the customer, and here's how we're going to do good for the customer. But you got to explain it, show why this is good, and help them understand. So again, good relationships inside the company are key.
I agree. Inside and out. I agree.
And then the fourth one is the outside relationships. You can learn a lot from other people in the industry, or even guys in other industries. So, I mean, when I was talking about number one of doing all this research, well, there's a lot of stuff going on outside, and you can't possibly know everything.
Right.
So knowing other smart people who maybe know something in different areas or even a different industry. There's something they can always bring to the table, and either um, point you in the right direction, or say, oh yeah, one of our guys has used this thing before and it's really good. You should check it out. So definitely, yeah, building those external relationships that is helpful in many, many ways to in being a CTO.
I agree.
Yeah. And number 5, I'm not sure what number 5 is.
I think it's creativity.
Yeah, you definitely have to spend some time knowing how to put things together, or to build stuff, or to come up with ideas. It's I've come from an artist family. My father's a painter, and my mother was a painter, and so they've always. My father's also done lots of created custom jewelry and other kind of sculpting, and so I'm just used to creating things, and I get antsy unless I'm creating.
Mm-hmm.
I get I don't feel comfortable unless I'm building something or creating something, or so. Luckily, I haven't ever had an issue with that. But yeah, you definitely need to spend time on you learn something. Well, see what you can do with that. Put it together with something else. You see it. You learned about a new language for doing configuration management, say maybe Ansible or something. Oh yes, play with Ansible. See what is the language, how it works. See if you can create something in a little installation package or something. So yeah, definitely, always be looking at what you can build, or that creativity is super, super important. So I guess that's number 5.
That's number 5. And the final question is, do you think there needs to be a mentorship program? Because oftentimes when I go searching for like a CTO, only thing I find is like everybody has the same answer. I just interviewed 12 other CTOs to get a gist, and nobody really knew. Or they're like, well, we don't know what it is. We just kind of float. So the question I have is, do you think it's better to maybe like make a CTO academy or something like that, where people can actually hone in on not necessarily the skill sets, because I think that's just a part of it, but maybe some of the soft skills that you need as well, because a lot of people who lead don't really have a great set of soft skills, or should be leaders, if you follow what I mean.
Yeah, unfortunately, I run into a few like that. Yeah, I mean, it's the problem is there's not a lot of CTOs. I mean, if you really think about it, not every company kind of needs one. Sometimes that role is held by people like a product manager, or sometimes a CEO, a co-founder. Sometimes that role is held by like a VP of R&D. So there's also kind of a certain size company, or in certain types of companies you have to have CTOs. Like a lot of larger companies, if they're not super technologies or a technology driven industry, a lot of times they won't have a CTO. They have a CIO, Chief Information Officer. So like, again, I don't think there's really enough. And then at a company, usually there's one. If a company does have one, there's only one of them. And a 1,000 person company's got one guy as a CTO, and he may have a small 3 or 4 person, 10 person staff out of the 1,000 people. So, having an academy is a little much to do. And again, it's a also kind of a nebulous type position, in that there's really a kind of wide variance in the types. I mean, if you've got a evangelist type CTO, like I said, he doesn't even have to be a programmer. He may not even be an electrical engineer. He may just be he could have been a sales guy at one point. To total opposite in is an infrastructure CTO or a technology CTO, where they've got to build a prototype of some software. It's pretty wide gamut in the type of skills needed between those 2 or 3 different types of CTOs. So which one do you teach for?
Right.
So again, it is pretty nebulous thing, in that it's the company may not need it, or if the company does know they need a CTO, what type, and a lot of it is just finding the right guy, the right kind of person, the right woman who kind of jives with what that company's goals are, and understands that industry. So a lot of it is a lot of CTOs are, like I said, also, a lot of times they're founders. So
right.
They help create the company. Like I have a side company that I created called Meros, and I'm the CTO of that company, but I'm also the founder, or one of the founders.
Okay.
So it's I mean, you're if you're not a founder / CTO, you're like I said, somebody who knows that industry pretty well, and usually has a pretty deep resume on doing different things, or building things, or being somebody who's has held like a couple different roles, like VP of R&D or VP of products, or a more senior technology other role in the company, in a company. So it's kind of a hard position to train for.
I agree. Everything I see is on a CIO. And you get CEOs as well too, but never the CTO, which I think for me is an awesome job in terms of being able to stay technical. Whether you want to do infrastructure or software or be an evangelist, I think it allows you to do a little bit of both, where you can fall into a CTO, CEO position. You can go work at a startup. You can go start your own. I just think it's pretty versatile. Not to say that the CEO can't do it, but oftentimes you see that it is the CEO, CTO mixed together. But I think the CTO kind of offers that flexibility, where if you are that technical person, you can kind of do both and lead, and still keep your skill sets up. Is how I see it. Versus the CEO, I'm not saying that all does it, but you don't really have time to be technical. You gotta get it.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes you got a lot of other stuff on your plate to deal with.
Right.
So you can't spend your time stuck in code, and you got to be mainly spending your time with relationships and customers, and either marketing support, or like I said, lots of time with customers. Moving your product, your company to get basically a market fit, or getting the right product to match up with the right type of customer who's going to actually pay money for it.
Yeah, I agree. Eric, is there anything else you want to add to the conversation in terms of being a CTO? Anything you want to promote? If someone wants to get in contact with you, how could they get in contact with you on social media or LinkedIn or so forth?
LinkedIn's the best way. Eric _sites@mac.com. MAC.
Mm-hmm.
And, I basically, like I said, I've got, a side company, a DevOps company. We're building container management systems for Docker containers, monitoring and management. Like I said, a long history in helping companies, build the future.
We'll have to get you back on the podcast to talk about containers and monitoring. That's a separate podcast.
Yeah, cool.
We'll have to do that separately. Maybe even do a demonstration of your product.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, Eric, thank you for your time. We'll make sure we get this out to you, and also make sure we tweet this out as well too. But thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Women in Linux podcast. Women in Linux is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization created to get women involved in the field of IT using Linux as a foundation. You can connect with Women in Linux through social media at Women in Linux on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. To join weekly meetups, go to meetups.com/Women in Linux. For more information and to connect with Women in Linux, go to www.womeninlinux.com.